There are a lot of executives involved in AI transformation right now, making decisions, setting strategy, signing off on initiatives. Far fewer of them are actually going deep themselves, using the technology in their day to day, living the change they're asking their organizations to make. Our guest today is one of the exceptions. She has spent her career advising organizations at the highest level. But what strikes me most about her is not her incredible resume. It is her integrity. She will not lead a transformation she has not lived herself. And right now, she is living it. I'm Adriana.
And this is Leo. And this is
This
She
is
Runs
She
on
Runs on
AI.
AI. Welcome, Lori.
Welcome, Laurie. Why don't you
Hey,
tell us
thank
more about
you. Thank you,
yourself?
Adriana. Thank you, Leo. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for taking the time. You're both amazing change agents, and we appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Laurie, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? How did you get involved in the world of AI?
Sure. Well, I've been in the field of data science for pretty much my whole career. I've worked for a couple of data science companies, the company that invented the credit score, the company that invented catastrophe risk modeling. And so I've been implementing solution, part service, part solution, part algorithm products for a long time and noticing that it's not usually just the technology. It's often changing the business process, changing the work that people do when you implement these types of things. And so now with the advent of AI over the last few years, obviously that's all gone up just, exponentially. The human factor of what the transformation is requiring is even more and more critical. So, and I don't want women to get left behind in this whole journey. And it's something that people have to take the time to learn how to do. And it takes a little bit of, it's very accessible to people, but it does take time and patience. And what I've observed in my career at Bain Company, where I've been a senior partner for a long time, helping companies adopt new technology, you've got to get the senior executives on board. They also have to be hands on keyboard. They have to actually fully understand how this stuff works and how it can actually increase productivity. And so I've been a big proponent of helping people learn how to use the tech themselves. And you got to learn by doing. So I've been investing my own time in learning myself.
Laurie, I'm so curious. That's such an important point that you make. But what happens? What's the risk of not bringing the executive leadership into the conversation? What could happen if companies get that backwards, if they start with implementing without taking the strategy piece into consideration? What's the risk of doing that?
Well, there's different aspects of this transformation. So in our practice and in work that I've done, we've built custom solutions that are going to help transform a workflow. So for example, the marketing department wants to use a tool to help them personalize marketing content. We've built a custom tool and we've done a lot of user research to understand that workflow and to figure out how to just embed that tool. So we have to win the hearts and minds of the users because their job is going to change. Instead of sending that content out to an agency and letting the agency do the work, we're giving them a tool to empower them to do the work, but it is substantially going to change their job. So that is one type of transformation that's happening. Companies are implementing these custom tools that have been designed specifically around a new workflow. That's different from an executive using the tools themselves for their own personal productivity. And I feel like companies have to be doing both. And only when executives are doing what I'm doing, spending like a few hours on a Saturday trying to create a personal assistant in Claude, only when they actually slog through that and like really iterate with it and understand how it works, do they really understand the art of the possible and also the reality of how much it changes things and how much sort of patience and elbow grease that it takes to make it work properly. And I think without that full appreciation, it will be hard for executives to fully have empathy and to really understand both the power of what this can do and also the amount of time and effort and care that it takes to actually make the change to get the benefits.
Following up on that piece, Laurie, I'm curious, if an executive comes to you today, from your experience, you give them an advice on how to begin with AI, right? How to start with AI. Would you see yourself changing the advice if it's a female executive versus a male executive? And why is that if there is a difference on what you say?
Well, not necessarily. I don't think the advice would be different. I personally have been involved in an organization called Women in Data Science that was started at Stanford University in 2014. And I've been involved with that group for a long time. And I feel like sometimes it's important to provide the right kind of encouragement and the right kind of support to get people to take a risk. And in particular, I don't want women to get left behind in this journey. So the field of software engineering, for example, has changed quite a lot with Codex and the tools. And there have been layoffs and such and downsizings because people are expected to be more productive using these tools. Similar things are going to happen in the field of data science. If you think about kind of the lower level, entry level tasks of dashboarding and working with Tableau and the tools that allow you to build a dashboard and analyze a spreadsheet and such, those will all be automated. And so women who might be in those roles absolutely need to start learning either how to use the tools that are going to automate those roles or taking advantage of learning some of the new techniques that in the new jobs that are going to be created because of AI. And the data science training is perfect for AI solution development, the strategy in the world of AI. There's numerous new jobs that are coming that are in demand where people can retrain themselves for those new jobs. The act of machine learning and building models and such, that's also going to have tools similar to the Codex type tools. And so I feel like we have a dearth of women in the pipeline for leadership roles. And I feel like women right now need to stand up and be encouraged to adopt the new tools, to take advantage of learning on the job, to take advantage of some of these new roles that are going to provide the future in the field so that that pipeline stays strong and so that the future leaders who are at the table making the very important decisions that will be made as this workforce transformation and as we fully absorb the capability of this technology, I want women at the table. So I feel like it's really important to encourage women in data science right now to be self-learning, taking advantage of training, learning on the job, raising their hands for a new opportunity within their companies that they may not feel qualified for, but they will learn, and just really encouraging women to step it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Lori, we also want women at the table, and the reality is that there are not enough of us using the technology, making decisions, guiding teams on the opportunities, but also on the risks, right? I find in many of my conversations with women that we bring a different perspective from what I hear from men. So there's real benefit to having more of us participating in the conversation and really shaping the future of us working alongside AI. And one of the reasons of why we think this moment matters so much for women is that for the first time, there are no gatekeepers. You don't need a technical background. The barrier is not access. The barrier, I believe, is time. Women are already stretched thin, managing more than anyone should have to manage careers, families, teams, everything. Women are already running at capacity. And that's why the investment of women using AI has to be very intentional. But this is one of the few investments that can actually give you a time back. And Lori, you have made a conscious decision to embrace AI in this phase, this chapter of your career. What problems are you solving with it? And how is AI showing up in your day-to-day?
Yeah, a couple of ways. One is I'm trying to retool myself so that I'm credible in the field that I've been, dedicated my career to, and as I advance my career at this stage. So I want to be credible. So I feel like you have to be hands on keyboard to be credible. You have to live and talk the talk. Separately, I recently retired from Bain and am pursuing a number of advisory roles and potentially going to become a coach to help people learn how to use AI. So I'm training myself for that. But with the retirement from Bain, I lost my executive assistant, who was so important, incredibly important to me in making the trains run on time and making sure meetings were scheduled and I knew where I needed to be. And if I had to be, for example, I live in Marin County and I take the ferry over to the city in San Francisco. So if I have to do that, I need to know which of the 3 ferry terminals to go to, who gets me there on time, et cetera. And just all of those things I had somebody helping me manage those things in the background. and never realized, well, I did realize how valuable it was, but I didn't really appreciate how hard it would be to continue to operate at the level that I operate and still have all that stuff happening properly in the background. So I was telling you earlier that I took some training. I went to the Human X conference at Moscone Center a few months ago, and I wandered into a room, a company called Mindstone that provides training to executives on productivity using AI. And I took the training and I fell in love. And then I recently took, a Saturday afternoon. It was kind of gloomy out, wasn't missing anything outside. And I just literally sat down and thought through, okay, what are the most important things that are slipping through the cracks here? First thing is scanning my inbox, like just people asking me for a meeting, either sending me a link to their calendar to schedule something or open-ended saying, hey, let's get together. And the amount of time it takes me every morning to scan that and just make the list of things that I need to schedule is, enormous. So I just said, okay, let me just take this small chunk of it. Let me see if I can get AI to do this. And I like Claude a lot. So I set up a Claude project, and you can teach yourself how to use AI by asking AI. I went into the prompt bar and I said, this is what I want to accomplish. I know I should do it in projects. Step me through what I need to do. And Claude told me one step at a time. Like first, you need to break it down into the individual tasks. Then I asked Claude, this is the task. And I told it the task. I said, write me a prompt that I can put into the instructions. And it does it for you. But it takes a little bit of organization. Like you have to be really clear. What is my objective? What are the steps to achieve that objective? And then you have to have the patience to sort of iterate with Claude, or you can do this in GPT as well. I just prefer using Claude. You tell it what you want it to do, and then it will eventually write the prompt that you can then cut and paste into projects. And then you have to test it. You test it, you run it, and you see if it's doing what it's supposed to do. If it's not doing it, you go back to Claude. You say, okay, you're not quite getting it there. You need to make this adjustment. Please rewrite the prompt, and it will do it. So it's really gratifying in many ways. Like it's really gratifying, but it takes some patience and it takes some clarity of thought of exactly what you're trying to do to be able to give the instructions to the machine in the same way that you would give them to a brand new employee fresh out of college or fresh at the desk. You have to be patient and you have to explain things in a pretty careful manner. So anyway, that's been my experience. I've been running it. Every morning I wake up and I just say, run scan. And it runs through my inbox and it gives me the list of meetings that I need to get scheduled. And it asks me questions. It says, for this one, you said this in email. Are you sure? This time frame, et cetera. And it keeps the running backlog of things that I need to attend to.
Love this. Laura, did you imagine 20 years ago that you were going to be in 2026 with this virtual assistant prompting you for your day schedule and all of these things that you're doing with AI today?
Goodness, no. I mean, I've been in the field myself for a long time, and I know about machine learning. I know I've been using models or helping companies implement models to make decisions in line. So this is obviously the next instance of that, but it's so transformational. It's such a big step up from where we were before. And the fact that it is natural language so that a regular person who doesn't have programming expertise can talk to Claude and tell Claude what you want and ask Claude to teach you how to do it. That is mind-blowing. That is really mind-blowing and potentially game-changing for the people who really want to learn and want to build the productivity improvement by using these things. And honestly, for me, just deciding to go on my own, retiring from Bain and losing my executive assistant who I relied on so heavily has kind of created the need that I didn't have before. So I think in many ways, it's easy to be complacent when you have the old way of doing things, surrounding you. You almost have to throw yourself in the deep end to create the burning platform. It does take a fair amount of patience and iteration, especially if you're new at it. So my advice for somebody who's getting started is to start with a small objective. Don't overcomplicate it. I just started with the scheduling objective. I've added functionality as I've gone, but I just started with this one small objective, and make sure that it's something really important to you because you are going to have to iterate. So if you decide, I'm just going to experiment with this and it's kind of throwaway, it doesn't matter if it works or not. It's kind of not the right level of focus and attitude. You got to pick something that is really important and you really want to get good at it. or you want it to work properly. Because as I said, it is going to take some patience and iteration.
I love that. So many times we see people just trying to get us started with AI, and then at the first prompt, at the first outcome, they said, "Oh, it's not working for me. You know what? It doesn't just give me what I need," and then they stop. And then they repeat that story over and over again. I don't work with AI because it just doesn't give me what I need, or it's not my tone, or, and that's such a critical piece, Lori, that you have to have patience and you have to reiterate, because it's going to be learning from each one of the interactions you have with it. So don't stop there. Keep repeating, keep trying it. At some point, it will get to the point that you need it to be.
Yeah, asking it questions too. I mean, that's the thing. That's the game changer for me is like, if you want to learn how to do something, you ask it to teach you. You ask it to break it down. You can ask it to teach you how to get the most out of it. And that was something that didn't occur to me in the beginning.
And something that you said earlier was the onboarding process, right? I find that it's very helpful to think how you would onboard your own team, right? You need to give them context, right? So it's kind of that same logic of what do I need this project, in this case with Claude, to know to be able to do the job at the highest quality. And asking that question, if you don't even know where to start, you can say, this is the problem I have. For you to be able to do if you were an executive assistant, what do you need to know? What do I need to provide you, right? So that piece about onboarding and being very clear on the outcome, I think it's so critical.
Well, that's also the benefit of setting it up in a project. So everybody, I think, is sort of just chatting in the regular chat window, which is great. And you can get better and build expertise at the prompting. And the more you do it on a specific topic, the more it learns about you and it remembers. But if you really want to automate a task or get something to the next level, when you open it up in a project, the memory is always there. Every time you iterate with it, it gets better. The other thing is there's a place where you can upload files or instructions to it. So that part about giving it the right context, Adriana. So in my example, when I have a meeting in the city, I have to take the ferry. I realized in one of the early things that it was looking for the ferry schedule on the web, and it wasn't looking at the current one. It was looking at the ferry schedule from 2022. Obviously, timetables
That's
change.
a problem.
Order. So I went and got the PDF of the current ferry schedule, and I loaded it up into files. Files is the place where you put context. You put examples of work, an output that you want, and you can actually store the context in there. And that's really cool because, it will give you much, much better, much more personalized, much more accurate results if you tell it what it needs to know in order to do a good job. So that's one of the reasons to move from just perfecting your ability to use chat to actually moving one step up into automating tasks using the functionality of projects. And ChatGPT has something similar as well.
Yeah, that would be the custom GPTs,
right?
For those using.
And one step up from that is co-work, which is truly agentic AI. And I haven't quite figured out what experiment I want to run to make that step up, but that's going to be my next gloomy weekend project when I have a few hours to teach myself how to do that.
Lori, I'm just fascinated by you, and I keep trying to understand, and I don't think that any of us have the answer yet, but the AI adoption, is it a mind shift or is it a skill that you learn and relearn? The reason why I'm asking this is because, not only are we trying to encourage women to adopt AI faster than ever before, but now with people working longer than ever, right? And even when you hit the retirement phase like you did, you still find yourself wanting to reskill. I gotta believe that there is something in you that has that hunger and that thirst for learning and upskilling. But I also want to believe that anyone can do it, right? What do you think?
Well, I think anyone can do it. I do. I do think, when we do change management work, we think about two things, two axes, two dimensions. One is the skill and one is the will. And we start looking at people in a process. We're taking through a change and okay, some people have the skill, but they may not be as motivated. Some people are highly motivated, but they don't have the skills. So the intervention and the support that you provide varies depending on where people are in those two continuums. But I feel like right now, this is an enormous time of opportunity and change. was trying to remember with my girlfriend the other day, like, was my grandmother around when there were still horses and buggies? Like, was she around then when the Model T Ford was like driving around? And we were trying to figure out, we were talking about the Waymos in San Francisco and like, at what point will it all be autonomous? And, so I feel like this is a pretty big shift that impacts the way people do work, the way people stay organized, the way people plan a vacation, the way people think about how they, use their time. And these are early days. I do think that the tools will become more point and click. The innovation is happening. It was sort of like back in the days when spreadsheets first existed. You had to put in the command line a backslash and you had to like tell it what to do. And it was more, it took more skill actually to use a spreadsheet than it does now. Everything's drop down menus and, but it's helpful to have been on the journey of learning how to use a spreadsheet when they were not point and click. It's helpful because you understand how they work in a way that you won't when it's, just made really simple. I also feel like, the innovation is happening so rapidly that I feel like a wait and see approach is probably going to leave you behind. So I feel like the investments, even the small ones, I'm not spending my whole life doing this, but I am making small, very specific investments in time to try to get up to speed and to try to experiment and to try to understand how this stuff works and how it can work for me. I am making that investment now because I think it will pay off later. And, it's just people are living longer and we've got a lot to give at a certain point. And being current on new technology is part of like being alive and still contributing at every stage of life, but particularly at this stage where I do have more time. And I can choose what I want to do and how I want to be impactful.
Thank you, Lori. We're 100% with you in this belief that women need to embrace the technology, be curious. And that's exactly why we created SheRunsOnAI. I feel super inspired and energized. Thank you so much for bringing your point of view to the conversation. Lori, anything else that you want to share before we close?
No, I just thank you for celebrating women who are doing cool things. I think seeing is believing. And I think what you're doing is terrific. I think, sharing stories is really important, particularly at a time of change. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. Well, to our audience, just remember, you can follow us at SheRunsOnAI.com. Please feel free to subscribe to our newsletter, and we're going to be bringing you more voices, women who are running on AI. Thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you, Lori.
Take care.
Thank you.